Hey, I'm Jay.
And I'm Jaimie.
In this video, we're going to show you how we use the X-Carve to make these giant alphabet blocks. Some really close friends of ours just had a baby, and we thought as a great Christmas gift it'd be a cool idea to build them some giant alphabet blocks with their baby's initials.
So we started thinking about how we want to build these, and we decided that the X-Carve from Inventables would be the perfect tool for the job. We could carve out the letters and animal shapes and numbers, and then on the back put a skull, because all babies love skulls.
Babies do love skulls.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much fact.
Our baby loves skulls.
I wonder why. For this project, we're using white pine boards that we picked up at the big box store. These are 8 foot long and they're 1x10s. And to make this project more affordable, we picked out the lower grade ones and then just cut out all the knots like this, and we ended up with a bunch of really nice blanks. With all the pieces rough cut, we put everything through the thickness planer to bring them down to a uniform thickness and to clean up the pieces. Optional, but helps a lot. On the table saw, we ripped all of the pieces to their exact width and then cross-cut them to their exact length. In no time at all, we had 18 pieces that were all exactly the same size.
I love this part. It's where we get to see our designs come to life. We're going to use the X-Carve to carve out the animals and letters in our wood. So I found a really cool pack of animal vector art online. I purchased that and I'm really excited to use it. Now we're going to take the animal vector art in the easel, set up our canvases, and go.
So first I actually took the artwork into Illustrator to simplify it a bit. Then I imported the SVG into easel and set the cut depth to 1/8 of an inch. We run the simulation, which maps out the tool path and lets us know that it's going to take about 30 minutes. We're using a V-groove bit, which has a super fine tip for really detailed carves. V-carving requires Easel Pro. If you haven't upgraded to Pro yet, Inventables gives you 4 free days per month to try it out. Since we want the inside of our lines to be painted, we mask off the wood with blue painter's tape first before doing the carve. And 31 minutes later, we have an alligator. The carve turned out really nice, but the tape got a little messed up in the process. We also carved a chameleon, octopus, jaguar, bear, and Yeti.
The letters were a little more complicated and had a few different parts. There's a square in the middle that has the deepest cut depth, and that gets centered, and then a bunch of stripes, which are about 1/4 inch tall, those get centered as well and have a medium cut depth. And then the letter goes right on top, and this is set to 0 cut depth, so it cancels out the cut. You can see it makes a really neat shape. Next up, we had the numbers. These were really simple to set up, and they only took about a minute to carve, so that was nice. So the cubes obviously have 6 sides, and the way they're going to go together is with miter joints. We needed a perfect 45-degree cut on all 4 sides of all 18 pieces, which meant a whole lot of miters. Since there were so many, we decided to do a few tests just to make sure this was going to work before committing to all 72 cuts.
Okay, that worked, which is great. I chose the carve that was the absolute fastest just in case the first one went wrong and I had to redo this piece. Each of these miters is a really clean 45 degrees, so I think this is going to work.
We were feeling confident here, but we decided to run one more test and cut 6 pieces and make sure that a cube would actually fit together before carrying it all the way through. A little blue tape later to dry fit it all, and we had a cube. I won't say we were surprised, but we were definitely happy. Now that we knew our master plan was going to work, we went ahead and cut all the rest. Next up, it was time to start painting. We did a little bit of cleanup on each piece just to get rid of any sawdust, and then we used a spray can with some black primer to paint in all the lines. Since some of these carved lines are so small, we always hit it from at least 2 angles to make sure to get paint in all the nooks and crannies. We let it dry for a couple of hours and then peeled off all the tape to see what we had. It took a surprising amount of time to get off all those tiny little pieces of tape, especially on some of the more complicated pieces, but 500% worth it. It looks so good.
To help assemble this cube, we're going to use a biscuit joiner, and that's going to make the whole thing stronger and stay together better, but it's also going to help us to align these pieces so that everything goes together smoothly.
We set our biscuit joiner to 45 degrees and then set up a jig on the bench to cut all 144 of these biscuit joints. Each miter was going to have 2, one on each side, and it needed to be repeatable, so we slid the joiner up against the stop block, put the piece in, cut the joint, which worked really nicely, and from there we'd rotate it 90 degrees, cut the next side, continue it all the way around. This actually went really fast. Once that side was done, we moved the biscuit joiner to the opposite side and repeat the process. This led to a repeatable cut, and we got all of them done in about 10 minutes. Pro tip, make sure to use the right size biscuit, because if the ones you use are too big, when the glue touches them they'll swell up and it'll be impossible to assemble your cube. Ask us how we know that. To apply the glue quickly, we're going to use a small roller, but we like to put some blue painter's tape over it so the glue doesn't destroy it on first use. Then you can reuse it a bunch of times. It's a really nice tip. To get ready to assemble the cubes, we first took some time to put them all in the order that we wanted. Each cube was going to have 2 letters, 2 corresponding animals, a number, and a skull. Having done a few test fits, it was surprisingly easy to do this wrong or to have one of the blocks rotated incorrectly, so we definitely took our time on this part. For the glue up, we used the glue roller to spread glue across all the sides of all the different pieces. And then all the biscuits got a bit of glue and inserted into each of the slots. You obviously only need a biscuit on one side of each slot, so we did that and then carefully put all the pieces together. In order for this thing to actually go together, we had to sort of loosely put it all together, and then the very top piece got biscuits on just 2 sides, and then everything got squeezed together carefully. As with most glue ups in woodworking, if you take your time and prepare and get everything ready ahead of time, it won't be too bad. After that, we put on as many clamps as we could to get it all together, and let it dry. A few hours later, the clamps came off and we checked it out and everything was looking good. There were some small gaps here and there. The pine boards were not perfectly flat, so we weren't able to get everything exactly right, but we were expecting that to happen, so we had a plan ready. After scraping away some of the big glue spots so that it would sit flat on the table, we brought it to the router table, put a round over bit in the router at about half depth, and then went through each of the corners just to halfway round over everything. To fill in the gaps, we're going to use a sawdust and wood glue mixture. Regular wood filler is super toxic and gross, and we don't want the kids to eat it, so we're going to use this. We make up a slurry here, and then we put some on our finger and we can rub it into the gaps on all of the corners. As craftsmen, sure, we'd love to build a thing that has no gaps in the first place, but hey, sometimes this happens, and this is a great way to fix the problem. Once that dries, we go back to the router table, set our bit to the final depth, and complete the round over.
Now that the boxes are assembled and the edges are rounded over, I'm going to sand it to give it a nice smooth surface and get rid of some of the glue gunk that's on the edges. Also, when we painted it, the paint kind of leaked under the blue painter's tape, so I'm hoping that sanding it will get rid of some of that for us.
We're using a random orbital sander, but in the end, since we put those pieces through the planer before we carved it, it didn't take a whole lot of work to get it smooth. We took off the sanding pad and hand sanded the edges. Lastly, a little compressed air cleaned out all the sawdust and got it ready for paint.
We got rid of most of the black paint that bled through, but it didn't get rid of all of it. But you know, that's okay. Not every project turns out the way you planned, and I think it looks pretty good anyway. To paint the letters of the block, we're going to use milk paint. Milk paint is really cool. It's pigment mixed with a milk protein. It's great for this project because it's non-toxic, so if the baby eats it, they're not going to die. And also you can't see brush strokes, which is great, and it covers really well on the wood.
All the colors looked really great, except for the yellow, which was basically invisible on the pine. We tried to make orange by mixing the red and the yellow, but it turned out an ugly peachish color, so we decided to use the 5 colors and repeat one instead. Next, we masked off the letters.
I'm going to judge you on your masking skills.
My masking skills so far have been questionable.
It's finally time to paint the letters. Now, a tiny bit of milk paint goes a long way in this. I started by painting the big parts of the letters with a nice soft brush. It's crazy how easy this paint goes on. To paint the edges, I used a brush with stiffer bristles and I brushed inwards at an angle towards the edges. The stiff brush helps to make sure that none of the paint leaks over the edge and gives you a nice clean line. To wrap these up, we sprayed them with a few coats of a nice non-toxic shellac finish. And oh my gosh, they look so good!
Hey everyone, if you enjoyed our video, be sure to give it a like. And then subscribe to the Wicked Makers channel. We have a ton more projects coming up with the X-Carve and woodworking and crafts and all sorts of cool stuff. Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you guys about what you think we should build next. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, and then we have a Patreon too. And lastly, if you want to know more about the X-Carve, which is a super big help in this project, you can check the link down in the description. We love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. Until next time, stay wicked. We're gonna set up. This is where the magic happens. Who wouldn't want to make their own Lamborghini?
Babies love skulls.